My son gave me 30 days to leave the house I had paid for. He did it on a Sunday afternoon while I was sitting at the kitchen table drinking coffee. He placed a white envelope in front of me and said, "I wanted to handle this privately before lawyers get involved." Inside was a notice telling me to vacate the property by the end of the following month. My property. The house where I had lived for 37 years. The house my wife and I had paid off before she died. My son stood across from me, with his arms folded, and spoke, as if the matter had already been decided. "Mom left me her half," he said. "I've been patient, but I need to take control of the house now." I read the notice twice. Then I looked at him. "Your mother left you her estate," I said. "That does not mean she left you half of this house." His expression did not change. "My attorney says otherwise." I folded the notice and placed it back inside the envelope. Then I did something my son did not expect. I thanked him for giving me the paper. The next morning, I went to the county recorder's office and requested a certified copy of the deed. My son had read his mother's will. He had calculated the value of the house. He had even measured the rooms he planned to renovate. But he had never checked how the property was actually titled. If he had, he would have seen the 4 words that ended his entire plan. Right of survivorship. My name is Raymond Cole. I was 70 years old when my only son, Darren, tried to remove me from the home I had spent most of my adult life paying for. The house stood in a quiet neighborhood outside Madison, Wisconsin. It was a 2-story home with brown brick on the lower half, cream siding above it, and a narrow front porch where my wife, Susan, used to sit every morning during summer. We bought it in 1988. Darren was 6 years old. Susan worked as an elementary school secretary. I drove a city bus for 31 years. Neither job made us wealthy. But we were steady. We saved before buying anything. We repaired what we could ourselves. We refinanced once when interest rates dropped and never borrowed against the house again. Every month, part of my paycheck went toward the mortgage. Susan handled the checkbook. I handled repairs. We worked as a team. The final payment was made 9 months before I retired. Susan baked a chocolate cake and wrote the word "ours" across the top in white icing. We ate it at the kitchen table with Darren and his wife, Melissa. I still had a photograph from that evening. Susan holding the satisfaction letter. Me holding a fork. Darren smiling behind us. At the time, I believed he understood what the moment meant. The house was not a prize. It was 30 years of work converted into security. Susan died 7 years later. Ovarian cancer took her slowly. For almost 18 months, our lives revolved around appointments, medication, treatment schedules, and the distance between hope and reality. During that time, Darren visited often. He drove Susan to chemotherapy when I could not. Melissa brought meals. Their daughter, Chloe, sat beside Susan and painted her nails. Whatever happened later, I will never erase the kindness they showed during those months. That was part of what made the betrayal difficult to understand. People are rarely only one thing. A person can help you during the worst year of your life and still decide later that your property belongs to them. Before Susan died, we updated our wills. Our attorney, Ellen Price, reviewed the house deed as part of the process. The deed listed Susan and me as joint owners with right of survivorship. Ellen explained that if one of us died, the surviving spouse would automatically own the entire property. The house would not pass through the deceased spouse's will. Susan's will left her remaining estate to Darren. That included personal accounts, certain belongings, and anything else titled only in her name. But the house was different. Ownership passed to me through the deed. Susan understood that. I understood it. Darren apparently did not. Or he understood only the part he wanted to understand. After Susan died, Darren helped me sort through her belongings. We did not rush. Some clothes remained in the closet for nearly a year. Her recipe cards stayed in the kitchen drawer. Her reading glasses remained beside the bed until I finally placed them in a small wooden box. The estate itself was simple. Susan had a savings account in her own name with approximately $19,000. She had jewelry, family photographs, and a small retirement benefit. Darren received what the will directed. The house was never included in the estate inventory because it had passed directly to me. Darren asked about it once. "So the house is yours now," he said. "Yes. But Mom's will leaves everything to me, everything she owned separately," he frowned. "She owned the house, we owned it together." He did not continue the conversation. I assumed Ellen had explained it to him. Years passed. Darren's life changed. His marriage became unstable. He and Melissa separated twice before finally divorcing. The divorce was expensive. Darren kept the business he had built repairing heating and cooling systems, but Melissa kept most of their savings and the house they had purchased together. Darren moved into a rental apartment. He was 51 years old and suddenly starting over. I felt sorry for him. I also felt guilty. Parents can watch a grown child make years of choices and still wonder what they should have done differently. I helped with legal fees. I paid 3 months of his rent. I gave him $10,000 to repair a company van. Darren promised to repay me. He made 2 payments and then stopped. I never asked again. About 6 months after the divorce, he began visiting my house more often. At first, I enjoyed the company. We watched football. He repaired the garage door. He replaced a broken kitchen faucet. Sometimes Chloe came with him. She was 23 then and studying nursing. She never asked for anything. She came because she missed her grandmother and worried that I was lonely. Darren's visits felt different. He looked around. He asked questions. How much was the house worth? Had I considered selling? Was there still no mortgage? What would happen if I needed long-term care? I answered some questions and avoided others. Then he started calling the house our family property. The first time, I thought nothing of it. The second time, I corrected him. "It's my home," I said. "I know," he answered. "I mean eventually." Eventually became the word he used whenever he wanted to claim something without appearing greedy. Eventually, he would inherit. Eventually, I would need help. Eventually, the house would be sold. Eventually, the future would arrive. But Darren had started living as if eventually had already happened. One Saturday, he brought a real estate website up on his phone. A house nearby had sold for $620,000. "Ours is bigger," he said. "Mine is older. The lot is better, I'm not selling. You should at least know what you have." "I know what I have." He looked around the living room. "You're sitting on a lot of money." "I'm sitting in my chair," he laughed. I did not. After that, he began discussing the house as a financial problem. The property taxes were high. The furnace would eventually fail. The roof had 10 years left at most. The upstairs bathroom was outdated. He said I could move into a condominium and free up hundreds of thousands of dollars. What would I do with it? I asked. Invest it. For whom? For yourself. But he said it too quickly. I began to suspect he already had another answer. Darren's business was struggling more than he admitted. One of his commercial clients had failed to pay a large invoice. He owed money for equipment. His business credit cards were nearly full. He had also guaranteed a loan for a partner who disappeared after the project collapsed. I did not know the full amount then. Later, I learned he owed more than $180,000. My paid-off house looked like a solution. At first, he asked for another loan. He wanted $50,000. I refused. I have already helped you. This is different. How? It would save the company. What secures the loan? The business. The business is the reason you need the loan. He became angry. You have money sitting in savings earning nothing. It earns enough. You could help me without changing your life. That is not your decision. He said I was abandoning him. I reminded him that I had paid legal bills, rent, and vehicle repairs. He said those amounts were nothing compared to the value of the house. That sentence stayed with me. The value of the house. Not the value of the help. Not the sacrifice. Only the difference between what I had and what he needed. A few weeks later, Darren asked to move in. His lease was ending. He said it would be temporary while he stabilized the business. I wanted to say no. Instead, I looked at the empty room that had once been his and thought of Susan. She would have helped him. At least, that was what I told myself. I agreed to 3 months. Darren moved into the upstairs bedroom. Within the first week, the house changed. His paperwork covered the dining table. Business calls began before 7 in the morning. Employees came by to collect equipment. 2 vans were parked in the driveway. He filled half the garage with tools and boxes. I asked him to keep business operations elsewhere. "This is temporary," he said. Everything was temporary until I objected. Then it became necessary. Darren also began controlling household decisions. He changed the internet package. He canceled the newspaper. He replaced the doorbell with a camera connected to his phone. He said these changes were improvements. I reminded him that he was a guest. He laughed. "We're past the guest stage. What stage are we in? The stage where I'm making sure you can stay here safely." I did not like the answer. The 3 months passed. Darren did not leave. He said his finances were still unstable. I gave him another month. Then another. During that time, he began talking to Melissa again. Not about reconciliation. About property. I overheard a phone call one evening. He said, "Once Dad is out, I can refinance and settle everything." I entered the kitchen. "Once I'm out of where," he ended the call. "You misunderstood. Explain it." "I was talking about the business property. You said Dad." He looked annoyed. I said Brad, one of the technicians. I knew he was lying. But I had heard only one sentence. One sentence was not enough to understand the plan. I began paying closer attention. Darren started receiving mail at my address from lenders. One envelope came from a title company. Another came from a law office. He took both quickly. I asked what they concerned. "Business." "Why is business mail coming here?" I updated my address. "You are supposed to be temporary," he sighed. "You keep returning to that, because you keep ignoring it." Then he said something strange. "I have rights here too." "What rights?" "I live here." "You have permission to live here. It's my legal residence. That does not make you the owner." He looked directly at me. "Not yet." I asked him what he meant. He walked away. The next morning, I called Ellen. I told her Darren had begun making ownership claims. She advised me not to sign anything. I had no intention of signing anything. She also asked whether I had changed my estate plan since Susan's death. I had not. Under my old will, Darren would inherit most of my estate. Ellen suggested a review. I told her I wanted to wait. Part of me still believed the situation would improve once Darren solved his business problems. Part of me did not want to admit that my son viewed my death as a financial event. The first clear warning arrived in the mail. It was a property tax notice addressed to me, but the mailing address had been changed to a post office box. I had not requested that. I called the county office. Someone had submitted an online request to redirect property correspondence. The requester had used my parcel number and personal information. The phone number belonged to Darren. I changed the address back and added a security note. When I confronted him, he said he was trying to prevent me from missing important notices. "I have never missed a tax payment. You're getting older. That does not give you permission to redirect my mail. I'm handling things. I did not ask you to." He became angry. "You refuse help and then blame people when they step in. Step in where?" "Your finances, the property, planning. I have an attorney and financial advisor. Strangers. Professionals. I'm your son." "That is a relationship, not a legal appointment." He stared at me. Then he said, "We'll see." 2 weeks later, he gave me the notice. 30 days to vacate. The document looked official. It had a heading, a property description, a deadline, and language about unlawful occupancy. Darren had signed at the bottom as co-owner and estate beneficiary. He stood in the kitchen while I read it. "You're not a co-owner," I said. "Mom's half passed to me." "No, it didn't." Her will leaves everything to me. The deed controls the house. My attorney disagrees. Which attorney? He named a lawyer I did not recognize. I asked whether that lawyer had seen the deed. Darren said he had seen the will. That was not my question. He became impatient. You've had 7 years to decide what to do. You don't need this place. Need has nothing to do with ownership. You can move into a smaller apartment. I can also stay. You can't maintain the house. I have maintained it. I do most of the work. You repaired a faucet and changed the internet. I've invested time and money. You have lived here without rent. That doesn't erase my interest. You have no interest. His face hardened. I'm trying to give you time, to leave my own house, to make this easier. For whom? He answered honestly. For both of us. I knew what easier meant for him. If I left voluntarily, he could occupy the house without resistance. He could present himself to lenders as the owner. He could pressure me later to sign whatever was necessary. The notice was not a legal conclusion. It was intimidation printed on paper. I thanked him for giving me a copy. That confused him. He expected anger, fear, maybe negotiation. Instead, I put the notice in my desk. The next morning, I went to the county recorder's office. A clerk helped me locate the original deed and the survivorship document recorded after Susan's death. The language was clear. Raymond Cole and Susan Cole as joint tenants with right of survivorship. Upon Susan's death, her interest had passed automatically to me. Not to her estate. Not to Darren. To me. A later document confirmed me as sole title holder. I requested certified copies. Then I visited Ellen. She read the notice and shook her head. This does not give him the right to remove you. Can he claim half through Susan's will? No, her interest did not pass through the will. You became sole owner by survivorship. What if he has been living there long enough to claim rights? He may have occupancy protections requiring proper procedures before removal, depending on the circumstances, but occupancy does not create ownership. He says he invested money. Did you agree to give him equity? No. Did you sign a contract? No. Did he pay the mortgage? There hasn't been one for years. Then he cannot turn repairs or household contributions into title by simply calling himself an owner. Ellen advised me to document everything. The notice, the redirected tax mail, the lender letters, his statements, his occupancy, the business activity. She also advised me to update my estate documents immediately. This time I agreed. Darren had been named as executor. I removed him. A professional fiduciary would serve instead. Darren would still receive an inheritance, but not the house directly. After my death, the house would be sold. Part of the proceeds would go into a trust for Chloe. Another portion would support a local caregiver organization Susan had valued during her illness. Darren would receive a reduced share through an independent trustee after accounting for documented unpaid loans. He would never gain immediate control of the entire estate. I did not make those changes to punish him for giving me notice. I made them because the notice showed me what he might do with authority. Ellen also prepared a formal letter rejecting his ownership claim and directing him to stop representing himself as an owner. We sent copies to the county office and the title company whose envelope had arrived at my house. The title company called Ellen the following day. Darren had requested a preliminary title review. He claimed he had inherited a 50% interest from Susan and wanted to explore financing against that interest. The title examiner had not completed the work. Once they reviewed the deed, the conclusion was simple. Darren owned 0%. Not half. Not a future half. 0. No lender could take a valid mortgage from him against property he did not own. The title company closed the inquiry. The next step was more difficult. Darren was still living in my house. Ellen referred me to an attorney who handled housing matters. He explained that I should not throw Darren's belongings onto the street or change the locks while he was living there. Even though I owned the property, I needed to follow the proper process to end his permission and regain exclusive possession. That frustrated me. Darren had given me an invalid notice, yet I had to serve him correctly. The attorney said something I remembered. Ownership gives you rights. Using those rights properly protects them, so we acted properly. Darren received written notice that his permission to occupy the property was ending. He was given the legally appropriate period to leave. The letter also stated that he was not an owner, trustee, agent, or authorized property manager. It prohibited him from ordering work, redirecting mail, applying for financing, or representing the property as security. He received the notice at breakfast. He read it standing beside the kitchen counter. Then he laughed. "You're evicting your own son. You gave me 30 days to leave first. I'm an owner." "No. My mother's will says otherwise. The certified deed says otherwise." I placed the copy on the table. Darren read the first page. His confidence changed. Not completely, but enough. He read the survivorship language. Then the recorded confirmation of sole ownership. He looked up. "This doesn't erase Mom's will. No, it explains why the house was never part of her estate. She owned half. She owned it jointly with me. Her share passed to me automatically. That's not fair. It's how we titled the house. She wanted me to have everything. After both of us were gone, you don't know that. I was married to her for 42 years. He threw the paper onto the table. You manipulated the documents. The deed was signed decades ago. You're using technicalities. The technicality is ownership." His anger became desperation. He admitted that he had promised a lender he could offer property as security. He had told business partners he expected to control the house soon. He had planned to refinance after I moved. "You made promises based on property you didn't own," I said. "I thought I did own part of it. You never checked. I saw the will." "You saw what you wanted." He accused Ellen of turning me against him. I said the deed had been recorded long before either of us met Ellen. Then he said something that revealed his real belief. "You've already had your life here." I stared at him. "What does that mean?" "You and Mom had decades. I'm trying to save my future, and my present is in your way." He did not answer. That was the truth. Darren did not see himself as stealing. He saw time as a transfer of entitlement. Susan was gone. I was old. The house should move to the next generation. In his mind, my continued ownership had become an unnecessary delay. For the next several weeks, Darren became difficult. He refused to move his business materials. He invited an employee to work from the garage. He told neighbors we were having a family estate dispute. He said I was confused about Susan's wishes. I remained calm. I kept records. I sent every important communication through the attorney. Megan had never existed. I had only one child, so there was no sibling to mediate. Chloe became the only relative who could speak to Darren without immediately becoming part of the argument. She visited one evening. Darren tried to explain that the house was partly his. Chloe asked to see proof. He showed her Susan's will. She read it.